Hi, I'm Jacqui from Brown Bird and Company, and this is our camper van, and I'm going to give you a tour of the van that we built 2.5 years ago. Decided to design the camper van so it had the feeling of an apartment to it and tiny living rather than making it too claustrophobic. So the reason why it's painted white and we've kept upper cabinets to a minimum was to maximise the feeling of space and lightness within the van. So we only have 2 upper cabinets. All of our other storage is either in the sofas, in the kitchen units, or in the garage under the bed. So we decided on this layout for the camper van, and we decided to take a small section of the bulkhead out. Now, a lot of people will take the whole bulkhead out of the camper van, but we actually quite like the industrial look of the bulkhead, and also there's practical reasons behind it as well. If there was a crash, then the bulkhead is designed to stop the content of the van crashing through onto you in the cab. And although everything is very well bolted down in the camper van and constructed, we still want to make sure that we're safe when we're travelling as well. So there's a safety aspect to keeping the bulkhead in, but also a practical one as well. The cab gets insanely hot during the summer and when the sun's shining, and you get huge amounts of heat coming through the cab into the main living area. So by keeping the bulkhead in, we can just simply attach a thermal panel across onto this gap which attaches with magnets, and that stops the heat coming in from the cab and it helps keep the main living area cool. Likewise, on the windows we have magnetic panels that clip onto the window frames and they insulate the van. They're quite simple construction, silver bubble foil and blackout material and magnets stitched into place, and all we do with these is pop them onto the frame of the windows or the bulkhead. So during really high temperatures, and we've had temperatures up to 35 degrees, the maximum temperature inside the van has been around about 23, 24. And particularly if you put the vents on as well, then you can keep the inside of the van really cool. So it's really important with regards to when you're doing your insulation in a camper van is to consider which seasons you're going to be using. Insulation's not just about keeping the van nice and warm in winter, but it's also used to keep the van cool in the summer as well. So the kitchen's from IKEA. We get many questions about the kitchen units. We decided to use IKEA units basically to save on making hand-built cabinets, which I didn't fancy doing. I do only have basic DIY skills, and also we wanted something that was really practical and robust as well. Now, the units do weigh more than if you were to build them yourself. However, we managed to save weight in other areas of the van build. So the first unit houses our sink and water supply. It's quite a simple setup. We use a Whale water pump and a simple on-off switch for the water. Inside the cupboard we have 2 water containers. They each contain 10 litres of water. The pump sits inside each container. Once we've used a container, the pump then we just drop it across into the next container. We decided to use containers for practical reasons. They are very easy to access water with and get those refilled rather than a main water tank. The tap is a manual pump tap, which we did use for the first 6 months. However, it broke and so did its replacement. So we decided to add an electric pump by Whale to the system and simply installed a switch which is under the bench, which is easy to access, It just turns the water on and off, and we've not had any problems now with the tap since using the automatic pump. A lot of camper vans do have hot water systems installed, however we didn't think this was necessary. We decided just to keep the setup quite simple, and if we need hot water we just boil up a pan of water. It takes a few minutes to do. It saves on a more complex installation in your camper van and saves you money as well. So we just heat up water as we need it for washing up, drinking, cooking and washing, etc. The corner cupboard contains most of our food, which you can see it's quite full and generally stays like that. We do try and keep as much food as possible so that we don't run out of essentials. We also have food underneath the 2 cab seats as well, so there's plenty of space under there for tin food and produce that will last a lot longer. So we decided to use sliding drawers in the kitchen units. They're the most practical thing really to have, especially in a camper van. It makes everything so much easier to access. And we've kept our kitchen equipment to the minimum. You don't really need an awful lot to cook the vast majority of things. The cooker is LPG. If you buy an LPG stove, just make sure that you put the LPG converters in and don't use it with the regular converters like we did, and find that you don't have much control over the gas flame between the large and the small size burners. So we decided not to install an oven. We didn't think we would need it and it would save on space and cost. And then we met some friends who recommended an Omni Oven, and it's an oven that sits on top of the gas stove, and basically we've managed to cook pretty much anything that we would normally cook in a regular oven, from breads, cakes, casseroles, stews and biscuits, etc. And we use this nearly every day now and it's been perfect. The drawers all have 7 kilogram magnets which are countersunk and attached to each side of the drawer, and they hold in the drawers nice and tightly, but you can still open them. We did have some magnets that weren't quite as strong and we found that the drawers were still coming open. The lower 2 drawers are used for personal bits and pieces, mainly electrical equipment, charging leads, etc. Receipts, odds and sods, the usual stuff. And then this unit houses our kitchen utensils. Now these 2 drawers originally we fitted these little locks before we discovered the magnets, but we've left those on because they do work rather well. So the most asked question on the Instagram account, way beyond any other, is where is the worktop from? It's live edge pippin oak, and we bought it from British Hardwoods in Skipton in the UK. It's kiln dried, so if you do look for a live edge wood, make sure that it's kiln dried, and this ensures that the live edge should stay on and that the wood won't warp and is nice and solid. The splashback we used is an offcut from the main counter, and we decided to add that because it reminded us of a mini mountain range. The worktop does get sanded once or twice a year. This keeps the wood looking nice and fresh, and we treat it with Osmo oil, which is a natural clear wax, and this protects the finish. If we do get any marks on the wood, then we just give it a light sand and treat it again, and it comes up like new again. So we love to cook, so we knew we wanted lots of herbs and spices to cook with, and we wanted something a little bit different. So we used IKEA regular herb spice racks, and we hacked them so that we have something that's specific to the size that we needed to fit on the bulkhead, and something that was unique. So we added copper pipes and some antique pine that we got from British Hardwoods as well. So when the van's travelling, you want to try and minimise as much rattling as possible, and obviously having metal against metal and glass against metal, then you're going to have some rattles going on. So we wanted to minimise that as much as possible. So each of the containers has a magnet which is stuck onto the back of the glass, and it then attaches to the bulkhead, and it just makes sure that these don't start rattling around when we're travelling. Kitchen lights are these copper uplights which are created, LEDs inside and a simple switch on and off. All components that you can buy down at a DIY store, and you can just make them up to the size and dimensions that you want and construction and shape. And they're just fitted with simple LED lights inside. So the herb and spice shelf also has lights installed. We needed some extra light over the sink because we couldn't really see when we were washing up. So we simply connected those up to the main kitchen lights, and they have small LEDs inside, and we can rotate the light as well, so you can kind of use it for directing the light onto the sink or into the van. We also have 3 down lights. These lights are actually the original lights that are factory fitted to the van, so when you open and close the door the lights come on. So I simply converted them to LED bulbs and added the copper and brass fittings to make them a bit of a feature, and they're quite handy. A lot of people do take them out, but it's quite good to have them so that the lights come on when you open up the doors. So we've got our mini campervan chandelier, which is simply the copper wire that was left after installing the gas hob. So it was just left as a coil attached to the ceiling, and then added these fairy lights around it. The fairy lights did wire into the system, however they kept blowing, and I couldn't work out why they kept blowing. So at the minute they're attached to a power bank, which lasts for several hours. It does have also a main light underneath as well, so that gives us some nice bright light in the camper van. So our seating area was designed so that we could comfortably work here as well. We knew that we would be doing travelling around in a camper van long term, and that we would be working while we were on the road, so it needed it to be a space that was comfortable for eating but also working and chilling out in as well. So the sofas are made up of padded seats, and they lift up, and underneath we've got storage for mainly jackets and jumpers in these 2 sections, and then we have a toilet in this section, and that just simply slides in and out. Use your toilet as you do and pop it back in. We've also got a shoe box here, just to get rid of shoes sat on the step, and there's also a fire extinguisher in here as well for easy access. The table is made out of antique pine and copper and brass fittings. It is fixed, but the original intention was that we would adapt the table so that it lowered, and we could then use this space as an extra double bed as well. However, in the rush to get travelling, we ran out of time, so I fixed the table, and we've not actually really needed to use it and convert it since, but it could quite easily be adapted so that this could become a double bed as well. We built the camper with the bed going across the width of the camper. This was to maximise the living space. However, it does mean that the bed is on the smaller side, particularly if you're over 5'8", 5'9". So we adapted the bed, and it now has a slider which pulls out, and we take the cushions from each side of the sofa and they simply lay on top of each other. They are the same depth as the mattress. This pushes in and holds them into place. Pull the duvet down, and then just move your pillows round to the other end of the van, and you have a bed that's 195 centimetres long, or as long as you want to make it. The van has warm air Propex heater installed. This is controlled with a thermostat, so it's simply turn it on and off and then set the temperature dial, and the system turns itself on and off to maintain the temperature. We have a gas gauge here so we can tell how much LPG we've got left in the tank. We have an underslung gas tank of 25 litres, which during winter, when the heater is on most of the time, including during the night, and for cooking, then it normally lasts a couple of weeks. During the summer, the heater's not on very often, so we're just cooking with the gas. So a tank of gas can last up to 2 or 3 months, and it costs about £15 to fill it. We don't have any built-in speakers, we just have a Bose sound link, which is brilliant, and that just charges up from the 12-volt system. We just got a lead, an adapter lead for that, and we can pick that or move it around the van to different places or use it outside, which is good. The electrics is quite a straightforward system, which I will go into in a little bit more depth later on, but the vast majority of the equipment that we use is USB powered. So for example, cameras, video equipment, drone, etc. The laptops, we bought 12-volt leads for those, so we don't need to use the regular mains adapter lead. And these are simply bought off Amazon, and they just plug into the cigarette lighter in your system. And the wattage on this adapter is about 60 watts, so even though I've got a PowerBook at 80 watts, it just means that it takes a little bit longer for it to charge than it would do normally, but it still charges it. We also have USB ports either side of the table, so that we can plug in our iPhones, charging leads for cameras, etc. Here we've got a volt meter to show what state the batteries are in at the minute, and this one shows us how much charge we've got on the battery and the voltage as well. It also shows the temperature inside the camper van. So at the back of the camper we also have USB ports for charging iPhones and Kindles, and we can also watch movies on the iPad on this shelf, which is quite handy. For storage, we only have 2 upper cabinets, and we store our clothes inside. Most of our things are in pouches, so pouches for t-shirts, tops, trousers, underwear, etc. It's just a really nice way of maximising the storage capacity and keeping things organised inside. Again, the cabinets have locks on them, so the doors won't come open when we go around corners. The lighting that we've got at the end of the bed, that's controlled by this, and we can turn that different colours, but it generally tends to just stay on a nice warm light for on an evening. So the camper van is fully insulated. We used 50mm Celotex or Kingspan on the main sections of the van panels. We've also used 25mm in other areas of the van as well to maximise head space and floor space. We used insulating foam spray to fill in some of the gaps, as well as recycled loft wool for some of the tricky places to get into. So the van's fully insulated. It's also got a vapour barrier in place as well, and to which we then added the internal wooden struts to the van frame, so that we could then build the walls and the furniture, etc., and attach all of those components to the inside of the van securely. So when you're building a camper van, you need to ensure that there is good ventilation. You don't want to get a lot of condensation and damp in the van build, because this can cause problems and it can rust the inside of your van as well. So we fitted a Fiamma turbo vent, which works with a couple of simple switches. You can set it to automatically come on depending on the temperature, and you can set it so that it pulls air in or it draws air out. For ventilation, we also have a Flettner fan at the back of the camper. These are normally found on commercial vehicles, and it rotates even with a gentle wind. So it means when you're driving, or if there's a wind outside, then it's always helping to ventilate the van. So our electric system is quite a straightforward setup. We have two 130 amp hour leisure batteries, and we have a ring charging system, and it draws power from the starter battery and the solar panels up on the roof to charge up the batteries. We also have a 1500 watt inverter which has a remote control, so we can use it and turn it on and off inside the van without having to come out to the back of the garage. We have a couple of items that we need 240 volts, and this does the job perfectly. So we don't have mains hookup or anything like that. We are completely off grid, and it's worked out really well for us. We have enough power to charge up 2 laptops and various other devices. Everything works great when it's really nice and sunny. Sometimes in the winter when it's a bit overcast, we can start to run a little bit low, but that's to be expected in the winter when you don't have as much sun. So at the back of the camper we've got our main storage area, which houses 2 mountain bikes, 40 litres of water, extra food supplies. There are shelves to slide skis in and out of. We've got plastic crates that hold our climbing and hiking equipment, and we have a cool box, 12 volt cool box, which is plugged into the inverter, and that runs very quietly. We don't hear it in the van. We don't eat meat, so we didn't want to spend a fortune on an expensive fridge, and the cool box has worked out really well for us. We also have this black plastic crate which is attached to the main body of the van and padlocked, and we put electricals and things in there just to make it a bit more secure for anybody attempting to get into the van.
I hope you enjoyed that content. If you hadn't noticed, we do have an ebook that we sell, and the link is just in the description. It contains 160 pages crammed full of practical advice, walkthrough information, electronic schematics and part lists, which will make your job a lot easier for doing a van conversion, and it will save you time and money. Also, we've created special videos for the ebook which enable you to see walkthroughs for how to do loads of things in a van conversion. So that's for water systems, for electrics, for how to do simple woodwork joints that anyone can do. And I really believe that anyone, regardless of their experience, can make a half decent van conversion. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate you watching our content, and we put a lot of effort to make it interesting, informative, and find those cool projects to feature on our channel. Consider subscribing, leave a comment, and we'll see you next week.